Hey everyone, welcome back. It's Lucid, and I'm joined once again by Sai.
Hi, this is Sai, and I'm once again joining Lucid.
And we have a very exciting turn for you here. We've got the start, as you can tell from the flags, the start of the Vaettiheim Pangaea War, and we have a few other conflicts carrying on.
Yeah, given how many orange flags are showing, it looks like Marignon is, at least to some extent, trying to strike back. So very excited to see that. But like Lucid, I'm most excited to see Vaettiheim because this is a player who has yet to have actually shown us what his tech is going to be outside of that tiny little group that he had with the buffs on the taking that throne. So this is our first time seeing what he's actually going to be deploying against other players.
Right. And Pangaea has a lot of countermeasures they can do. So far, we've really only seen Doomstack battles from Pangaea's side, but we now get to see probably a lot more of the raiding play that Pangaea can do, which they can do, I think, as you were explaining previously, pretty effectively with a bunch of elementals or buffs and all sorts of things. So,
Yeah, Pangaea in the late age is exceptionally flexible just because of how good the Centaur Sage is.
right.
So they're going to be one of Vaettiheim's tougher matchups, but they lack the ubiquitous stealth that Pangaea has in other eras, with only the cheaper and much weaker satyrs available for stealthy raiding.
Yeah. So we'll start this with, as we always do, with some messages. We'll start with a message from TNG. Latch here looks like I'm commander. Looks like I'm in the commander chair for a while as Demosthenes prepares for his wife having a kid. Looking at how good our position is, I hope I don't screw it up. On the Arethia front, it looks like our army spooked him, and he agreed to our earlier terms, with the additional concession of I have a few turns to move my mages out of that farm, which lets me move my mages with tools or with boots equipped so they don't waste much time walking. Any fight we would have any fight we would have would be really bloody, and Zabalba is circling in the background, waiting to pounce on the loser and take the spoils. And that's kind of what you and I surmised as well.
Well, I'd surmised that Xibalba would move on Erythia,
Right.
and then you had said and then like after talking it through, you'd said basically that because they could instantly pop these citadels, they would be able to get the lion's shares of the spoils.
Right.
That said,
But I think
if
you were right. I
yeah,
think they would go on Arethia either way, but I think they want TNG to do a big pounding on him first.
yes,
Because I think
yes,
if Arethia
um,
wins, they go on Arethia. If TNG wins, they go on Arethia. But either way, they want TNG to bloody Arethia.
right. That said, if I were in Erythia's chair looking at that TNG army, we don't know exactly what his level sevens are, but depending on what he has, if it's like, something like Fog Warriors or
Right.
Mass Flight to go with his high elemental magic, I think he would have been able to take that army relatively cleanly. Like it would have been expensive in gem
Right.
expenditure to be sure, but once you've smashed that army, then you stand to actually gain a lot of territory as well.
Right. Now, one thing I want to point out too, I was just thinking about, is that if Zabalba really was going to go on Arethia no matter what, he probably should have let TNG know and give him a turn on which TNG should expect Zabalba to commit. And if he did that, TNG would be much less likely to back out like they're about to do. And the reason that Zabalba wouldn't want to do that is if they actually were going to jump on, either TNG or Arethia, depending on whoever's losing or something.
Right. And then the other possibility is that he doesn't want to give a turn because the actual turn that he'd jump in is whenever one army gets destroyed, regardless of whose it is.
Right, right. But the consequence of taking that course of action of not committing, because I'm sure TNG was asking Zabalba for help, is that TNG's now backed out of this fight and made that's not going to get to happen. If Zabalba's going to fight Arethia now, it's going to be as a 1v1.
Yeah, or with other folks helping them out, but definitely
Right,
not with TNG if the two are actually like cooperating on globals and such.
right. So to continue the message, I think it would be a lose-lose, and I think we found a way to make it a win-win. You can see from the scales that our research is awful, or I think he means score graphs.
The graphs,
Yeah.
yeah.
To give an idea, that magic phase attack was unscripted because we didn't have Conjuration 5, and we only made it this turn by a single mage. So that was when he did that magic phase attack on the god to summon air elementals. I have to admit, threatening someone into a concessions with rigor mortis relief and foul vapors play as an all-human nation with no poison resistance feels a bit like the sheriff in Blazing Saddles taking himself hostage. Nobody move, or I'll blow this head all over town. It's a little racy.
Well, it's from the movie.
Yeah, okay.
The black sheriff took himself hostage.
Oh, that's...
Hence the...
Oh, okay. That's funny.
Have you not seen Blazing Saddles?
I don't know if I have.
Oh, it's great. It's fantastic.
Okay.
Anyways.
Yeah. It's not 12 there. So Demosthenes here to apologize. So this previous message was from Latch, who's taking over for Demosthenes. Though hopefully Demosthenes has told me he's going to stay looking at turns and stuff, so he won't be totally checked out, but he won't be doing the legwork. Demosthenes here to apologize to viewers that you won't get the huge battle we marched half our mage corps north for. We signed a NAP 4 with Arethia, ceding the two western provinces we raided, giving us a second path to Pangaea, and rights to contest the lake for the former bishopfish later. Most important is a new alliance with the neighbor that we were most afraid of taking our thrones the next time we're distracted or weakened. And while I think we could win a Doomstack fight if Arethia didn't bait or anticipate some key tricks in our script, it's super risky in that they can kill our siege chaff with all sorts of traps, foul vapors, earthquakes, wrathful skies, and firestorm, and they have literally twice our research. So I think we'd lose an extended war even if we managed to win the first big battle.
I'm actually not sure why he's confident about winning that first big battle, because Arethia just dumps a bunch of elementals and puts Mass Flight and Fog Warriors on them. I don't see how TNG's army beats that.
Yeah, I'm not sure. And we're not going to get to see as part of the problem. But TNG had a lot of mages, and Demosthenes, I will attest, is a very good player. So he had a plan. Whether that plan would work, I'm not sure. And if the plan was just rigor mortis, if Arethia made a bunch of elementals, that wouldn't work. But we don't really know.
Rigor mortis and vapors.
Right. So, yeah, I don't know if that would be enough, but probably not against elementals. But TNG can make some elementals too. Probably not the quantity and type that Arethia can. I should also mention that we have only Evocation 3, and thus are not even close to Wailing Winds. While I don't rate it super highly in this matchup due to Arethia having good leaders, ability to forge morale boosters, and mages who can escape underwater, Arethia clearly was afraid of that wild card.
As he should be.
Right.
That's, in my opinion, TNG's strongest mid-game magic tactic.
Right. Given the challenge of taking infrastructure behind Arethia's capital, right, because Zabalba is probably going to be the one to get that, I think the deal is one of our better possible outcomes for this 1v1. Despite considerable lobbying on my part for the last 10 turns, Zabalba and Pythium were unwilling to help kill the underwater threat, beyond making noises that they might vulture if we managed to wipe the Arethian army. I can hear Zabalba's voice right there. Pythium in particular has squandered this game's opportunity to avoid a mighty Arethia, and will pay a heavy price for it. We have another message from Arethia, where he explains more of the
glad. I'm honestly glad that at least Demosthenes recognizes that Arethia is a terrific threat late game, because so far no one else has mentioned that.
Right. Message from the man himself, Arethia, or woman, we're not sure. While a bit anticlimactic, we now have negotiated a peace with Tianchi. While I firmly believe I could take his army on using my superior number of mages, I have about 50 to his 20. He has rigor mortis and possibly wailing winds, so most likely I would lose at least my communion mages. Decisive factor was my talk with Zabalba, who was ready to move and attack the losing side.
At least he was honest.
Right.
That's kind of funny that his plan was, oh, sure, I'll fight whoever loses. No problem.
Right. Yeah. Since my troops are slow, even if I won, Zabalba would get the most juicy bits. Instead, both Tianchi and I are now planning to move on Pythium. So that's very interesting. So Pythium has been lobbied to attack by Tianchi. And that would be two lower tech, slightly maybe worse position players going after a higher position player. And that didn't happen. And now it's going to turn into Pythium still stuck in this war with Agartha. And if Arethia and Tianchi both go on him, I think they're going to just destroy him.
To be fair, I think the war with Agartha is about over. But that said, I completely agree. Between Tianchi's vastly superior resources and Arethia's both larger and much heavier research mage core, I don't see Pythium being able to survive.
Right. I mean, the thing is, the Agartha war may be over, but he still has to siege down these forts, and he doesn't have siege chap armies. His biggest army was like 180 of humans.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Right. And those are citadels he's got to work through. It's going to take a long time. And if these guys go on him, especially now, like, or in 3 turns by the time they get the troops to their border, and I think that Pythium might be on a research parity with TNG. They're slightly below TNG.
Yeah, they're definitely not at the level that you'd expect a Pythium to be.
Yeah.
It's been more that, like, this player is one of those guys who's just very good at the tactical movement.
Right.
So he's been able to get a lot done with, like, lower resources. But he's definitely behind where I think a Pythium should be at this stage of the game in terms of mage count and research.
Right. Okay, so that's that. We'll go look at, there's probably not going to be much to see. This is the Arethia TNG part of the turn is these messages. There's not going to be a lot of battles. But where we might have some battles is with Pangaea and Vaettiheim. So let's read these messages next and then go look at their war.
Yeah, I'm honestly a little disappointed just because I was so excited to see what Arethia was going to do.
I was too. I almost wish we could have like a backup version of the game and be like, okay, you guys pieced out, but script your armies. I want to see y'all fight.
Just a challenge battle?
Yeah. Like we can't do it until like 20 turns from now, but they get to go back in time and like script it out or something.
I honestly think Arethia would just win that one pretty handily because if it's just a challenge battle and like they don't need to, worry about their gem stocks or whatever, they win by just like pulling 50 mages and dumping elementals.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Putting Mass Flight and Fog Warriors or whatever on them.
Yeah, I think you're right. And yeah, TNG can't do Storm either to block that, so
they can with either boosters or matrices, but it's definitely harder for them.
They're evocation too for or 3 for research.
Right. Yeah. You're right. Yes. Yeah.
All right, so let's get into this with Pangaea and Vaettiheim. Let's talk about the war. I agree. Warp PC and I agree that we need to fight the goblins with everything, unlike Marignon. If there's a stalemate or a slow grindy war one way or the other, we'll be left behind by the fast-growing nations. We hit Enchantment 7 the turn you read this. So that's going to be Serpent's Blessing, Solar Brilliance, and Mass Flight. After that, 2 to 3 turns to Alt 7, Bone Grinding, Fog Warriors, Darkness. Oh man, that's quick. These two...
I mean, that's the power of Sages. They've been pumping those guys out, and they're very high research, and they're in Magic 3.
Right. But I mean, quick, I don't even necessarily mean in terms of like what turn number it is. I mean, that's quick in context of this war with Vaettiheim. Like, Vaettiheim has 3 turns until he has to worry about Bone Grinding, Idols of Sorcery dropping on his army.
Yeah, but he was already worried about it now.
Right.
So he doesn't know exactly where Pangaea is at, but it's at least already registered that this is something that they can do.
Right. Okay, so these 2 research targets should open a lot of plays and counter what we expect from Vaettiheim. On the diplomacy front, Zabalba and Utgard wanted to settle old grudges and have agreed to attack Vaettiheim in 3 to 5 turns, which is very interesting. And that makes a ton of sense, actually. Because if you think about it, Utgard especially needs to kill Vaettiheim. Right now, Utgard is like a meat larder for Vaettiheim, where they're just storing them for food for later. And
Utgard also has a very understandable grudge against Vaettiheim, given that they took like literally one of their provinces that had gotten nabbed by the barbarians.
That's true. Though, to be fair for Vaettiheim, I'm pretty sure that the barbs had been sitting there for several turns.
Yeah, it had taken Utgard long enough to take it back, but still.
Yeah. So this is a great opportunity for them. And Vaettiheim picked this war against Pangaea. And Pangaea has found allies that it makes tons of sense for them to come in on his side. Or their side. So TNG allegedly wants to be out of the war he started to pile on to us. Not sure what's going on there, but we're wasting gold on useless scouts to get the full picture. That's funny. Now, that's not actually true. They're both going to go on Pythium, or so we've been told by Arethia, not Pangaea. So we play a defensive war for at least 1 turn, try to catch raids, and let Dryads do their magic. Very hard against sneaky goblins. Ain't that the truth? Then fight in heat while we engineer a position to kill Rimvedis in Cold 3. Strangely, no Wolven winners this turn, but the Vaettiheim player already alluded to playing around it, as in casting it and attacking another province. Wait and see, I guess. As for Marignon... Oh, the Vaettiheim... Okay. As for Marignon, Gath should be able to handle them. We failed an attack last turn. Dryad died because she was still set to retreating. Oops. But raiding will continue until morale improves. If things start looking good versus Vaettiheim, we'll make a move for the inner throne, but that's another day. Sorry for the long message. We'll go back to random short musings now. Talimsha.
So Owl is one of those players who's like me in that he's very comfortable giving away some of his strategies just because he likes the game's mechanics so much that he just enjoys talking about it.
Right.
So he's going to say something along the lines of like, oh yeah, you want to Woven Winter in a separate province from the one that you're attacking and then follow up into that Woven Winter province, that sort of thing.
Right.
So like I totally understand where it's coming from because it's like this is the cool thing that Vaettiheim can do. So of course you want to share it.
Right. Yeah. He's the kind of general that you don't want getting loose lips in a hotel room, but that inevitably will. And then that brings us now to the messages from Vaettiheim. All right, here goes nothing. Launching a medium-sized elfing against Pangaea. We're playing a little passive to see what he pulls out, but also waiting on our research and our god. The attack against the Golden Throne is calibrated to kill PD or a small army, or to gem burn a large army, and to inflict maximum attrition via foul vapors. Have we seen...
I love that. That's perfect.
Yeah.
That's exactly what you want to do when you're attacking into an unknown force, is be able to beat the stuff that you can see, and if something bigger comes, then you're willing to make the hit to do it while still causing damage. So
Right.
We'll have to wait and see how it actually turns out, but that's exactly the level of force that you want to bring in these unknown enemy situations.
Have you heard Pangaea talking about Vetti's god? Do they know that Vetti also has the Idol of Sorcery?
I don't think that they mentioned it. It's one of those things that should be apparent given their blessing scales, but no, they haven't.
It might not be, right? I mean, they could maybe calculate it, right? But Pangaea has a bless that is only astral death, so it's pretty easy to guess. But Vaettiheim has a bunch of other things in there. Their god is not just...
It's astral. It's astral death air. It's air 4.
I think there's one more path too, but I could be wrong.
No, it's just those.
It's just those? Okay. All right. But even then, I don't know if I would assume that. These are what, all father paths? But anyway, I don't know if Vetti even gets access to them.
I don't think they get that one.
Yeah, okay.
Because it's a human.
Our research...
They might.
Yeah. Our research...
Because they are like kind of Germanic, but yeah.
Yeah. I don't know where they definitely seem like a European themed nation in a way.
Well, yeah, they're Nordic,
right.
But I don't know if they get the Allfather.
Oh, right, because they ill winter and all that. So our research is Alt 6, Enchantment 6, Evocation 4, Construction 4, Conjuration 4, Blood 4, Thom 3. I love that they're telling us this, because this makes it's going to make it so much easier for us to dissect the battles in terms of what they could do and things like that. Evo 5.
Yeah, so I definitely understand why they're going for Wailing Winds, because that's very much a wild card spell. And even though Pangaea is not particularly susceptible to it, it definitely can basically swing a battle that you'd otherwise lose.
I think it also makes it where you're more comfortable dropping the god on top of really big Pangaean Doom stacks, because one of the things they can do is their Earth Mages on advance and cast can shatter, which is still something they can do. But if that happens around like turn 15, the combination of Wailing Winds and Wrathful Skies is likely to make most of the mages run. Like it's hard.
Yeah, route or die.
Right. It's going to be a lot harder to do like an advance and cast shatter play with this in the mix. Okay, and probably Alt 7 the turn after. The turn after that, it's partially done. Not going to show Enchantment 6 until we have the opportunity to do a big Rigor and Grip Trap. We have about 1,700 RP a turn of mages, but of course, not all of them are researching. We're pulling in about 1,300 this turn. That's actually really useful information for us too, because we can look at the research graph and use Vetti as a baseline to kind of extrapolate where other players are.
That's true. Yeah.
Many of the Vetti gauges we are risking are twice-born. Also throwing in a random lumber construct we got from an event with some thug gear. This thing is quite valuable, but the draw here is that we can then dive underwater with it next turn unless he uses a god magic phase on it.
I wouldn't call that guy particularly valuable.
I think it's
but I guess it's early enough.
We'll take a look at it. I think it has like, because I think I peeked in and saw it. I think it has like 40 gems a gear on it or something.
Gotcha. I was thinking more that because it's early enough that they're still a ways away from golems, that it's valuable just because they don't have other mindless stuff.
Yeah, that's possibly true too. That's definitely something to think about when you're fighting an astral nation. So there are a bunch of Rimveti stealthed around, and a lot of stealth in our forest southwest of Mictlan. We're also preparing sneaky counters to Pan's Idol of Sorcery. I tested one of them extensively last night. Don't want to say it, since this might still be relevant in 30 turns, although a weird Illwinter design decision means there is counterplay to it. We can deploy ourselves if need be.
Maybe he's referencing the innate caster thing that you had told me about. That they're always casting like at a certain point in the turn order.
Yeah, that secret's starting to be a little bit out of the bag, so he might know about it.
He also does a lot of his own testing, so he might have discovered it independently.
Maybe. You have to be a really hardcore tester to figure that out, because you have to go in the debug log, not in, it's like you have to go out of game to really drive that to ground. But
well, I mean, if you're testing like 30 battles and the idol is always casting at the same point,
right,
then you might notice that way too.
That's true.
Because I know that this guy is a very, very heavy tester.
Okay. Well, good. Ironically, we're the only nation who really wants the Mason. Pan and Jomon don't have cap mages, and nobody else has primitive, but not very primitive, LA forts. Late Age TNC wants it for the Throne of Water. That's nuts for him. And the Hydromancers are really good mages. Or that's
and he even has those other, and he even has those other water mages.
Right.
If he wants water twos.
Pan may want it for the Golden Throne. We would love to get extra command points on the throne forts to triple pump Dimveti.
Or triple
pump Dimveti, yeah. But we're broke this turn. We could guide just to afford a 250 bid. Oh, that's not a very big bid for the Mason. Meanwhile, we're getting Dimveti. The fear of assassins makes people play around them. We already have one with a lifelong protection and a bow that's on the Golden Throne assassinating this turn.
I like that combination because the Golden Bow answers many of the mages that actually can counter LLP.
What? Well, we don't know what bow, right? Just the bow.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking the Golden Arbalist.
The Golden Arbalist, okay.
Just because, like, or anything that has very high precision value.
Right.
Because the idea basically is that you don't need it to get the kills, you just need it to interrupt casting.
Yeah, I wish we could see that. I'm almost inclined to like ask Illwinter, like, hey, could you guys patch in where you can see assassin battles if you're a spy?
Really or like some sort of dedicated, or some sort of dedicated observer thing. Yeah.
But it'd be nice if it was a spy, because then we could do it in this game or something. All right. While a bit anticlimactic, we have negotiated a peace with TN. Oh wait, we've already done this.
We saw this one.
All right. So let's go now and look at this Pangaea-vaettiheim conflict. So you can see there's a bunch of raiding, and it looks like Pangaea has been winning, but let's actually see what these are. What's been happening? This is a single hag, a Gaija that's been twice born with a pile.
These are the sword Betty, the herdmen.
The problem here is these guys were not on hold and attack, and so they didn't really take a lot of point buffs. I think this is a mistake.
Yeah.
Because these guys up front are going to die, and HP out the ones in the back. Yep.
Good catch there.
So that's one down. Now, those are disposable. Vaettiheim can lose these. Now, this is actually significantly more valuable, because these guys are a little more expensive.
Aren't they cheaper? Herd Veti are the expensive armored guys.
Let's check. I think these guys are 10 gold. Yeah, and these guys. These guys are 12.
These are
and there's
yeah.
So
and
not much
higher rec point. Yeah.
Yeah.
So not much difference, but
yeah. These guys are on hold attack at least, so he didn't mess up that. The risk, of course, is that the commander dies.
Oh, it got sniped. Yeah. Some of them are berserk. Oh, he didn't cast a berserk spell, Touch of Madness.
Yeah. How I like doing this, because this actually is a really common thing, is, and Veti's one of my nations now, is you actually want some of the herd Veti or the light infantry that have the shields. And a lot of times, if you're doing like a heavy commitment, you might have 6 mages that are all in one tile. But if you only have like 2 or 3 mages, or even 1, you want some people on guard commander here with this guy, and usually you want the cheap guys that just have shields to catch arrows and stuff. And then, yeah, this is really risky for raiding because you get all sorts of shit. But the important thing is that Pan has like a lot of PD here. Because if this were 6 PD, it wouldn't be a problem.
I like arrow catchers in general, like just like any game, any era. But in LA in particular, it becomes more valuable just because of how many human provinces there are that have these crossbows in them.
Yeah, where would you put, so if you were Vetty, where would you put the arrow catchers and how many of them would you do?
Oh, you just do like 3 guys at the very front, one in the front center, one at the front on either flank. And that interrupts a lot of different scripting. And basically all that you need from that arrow catcher is someone who is susceptible enough to arrow fire that the difference in the range between them and the unarmored hag makes up for the fact that they have a little bit of protection. And I think that Vetty light infantry actually get there, so you don't actually need to do anything special.
The risk that you have, I think, with doing that with this particular setup is we only have one commander and you have really bad morale. And the other thing is it may not block the flyers, and I think that's actually what got him this time, wasn't it? Because there's the...
No, I think it was the crossbows.
Oh, it was. You're right. Okay.
Yeah. So Harpies have the same problem that Eagle Warriors do in that their combat speed is very, very slow, so they don't get first hit.
Right. So yeah, I mean, maybe you can even do a few of them. The only thing that's kind of incompatible is that if you have one guy and you do arrow catchers, which will ruin the morale, that's okay for the Berserker tile, because you can maybe plan on doing one buff on them and then Touch of Madness before they run off.
Yeah, I think that's how I would do this setup is 6 Berserkers, because that's 1 square, and then you use the other 4 slots, so you can do like 1 guy on guard commander and then 3 arrow catchers.
Right. The risk is actually for the guard commander dude, because the Berserkers don't care about morale, but you may route the guard commander dude. But that might be good enough. That might be okay. And that's a very cheap, reasonably cheap squad. But yeah, this was a pretty major investment from Pangaea, which is, I think, the other thing that we owe in mentioning. I think this is 25 PD. So,
yeah, it's 25 PD so far in all the provinces that we've seen these raids fail.
Right.
Or both, I should say. We've only seen 2 battles.
Right.
Yeah.
But this makes such a big difference because it's basically Pangaea saying, I don't want to get behind on the raiding war, and I'm going to assume Vaettiheim's doing really low commitment stuff.
It's also a 200 gold swing on that province and a 300 gold swing on the one that you just highlighted. So this is like, he absolutely made up for that gold, like already, just for that one turn.
Yeah. The flip side of it, though, is Vaettiheim can very economically field things, which will murder 25 PD with hardly taking any losses. So you're kind of betting on Vaettiheim being greedy, which they were, because they only sent 1 commander with a handful of troops, which would totally work on 9 PD, but it didn't work on 25. So.
And Vaettiheim had scouts there, so this is actually a dump that Pangaea did just this turn, which makes total sense.
Right.
So like, he was thinking, oh, I see 6 PD, or, that 6 to 10 range.
Right.
So he sent forces that beat that.
Right.
And then Pangaea did that dump, and it worked out great. Yeah.
Yeah, so, and that's the other thing that Vaettiheim can do is if they had seen the previous turns, because like Pangaea already had it there, hey, there's a bunch of PD, they could have like combined these raiders in the same tile, and they would have for sure won.
Right. So I would say that because this is absolutely something that beats 6 PD, that this isn't so much a misplay from Vaettiheim for, doing a mild commitment, so much as it is a smart play from Pangaea for actually making these PD dumps that counter the light commitment rating.
Yeah. We have a pink here. We have a light raid here. Now, this army from Pangaea has been moving to the front, so it wasn't here the previous turn. And Vaettiheim's pinging with what he thinks will be enough to take, minor amounts of stuff.
I don't know if this burns gems, though.
Yeah, I don't think it does. It's
yeah, so you can get a Gaija that will burn gems, like in terms of like commitment. But I don't think that there's no
mages. Yeah.
Okay, so he has no gems to burn.
Yeah, this is like a prime army for hitting with if the Vaettiheim god is awake this turn, which it could wake up, I think you just send it at this. Like, this is the perfect target for...
Only if you know that he's not going to add mages to it.
Well, but he would...
Right, because like...
The mages would show up in the map and the normal phase.
I completely blanked. For some reason, I thought that they were patrolling somewhere, and I only just realized, like, oh, wait.
Yeah.
Those guys don't have mages, and they're not under a fort.
Right. That's
I
one
had
of the
gotten
things
confused.
that,
I thought that they were patrolling the fort. But
yeah,
yeah, no.
this is one of the kind of things that, if you're to like learn a player's kind of vulnerabilities, Pangaea has multiple times in this game moved his armies around without mage support with the anticipation of supporting with mages later. Like these mages could have supported this turn, but he's like, I can support later and I get one more turn of research. So it's
Yeah,
greedy.
because the sages are so fast, they can actually like multi-phase or multi-province move even into an enemy province. So if, for instance, he wants to attack that throne, the sages can still get there, no problem.
Right.
So that's kind of what he's playing around is I have these super mobile mages and they have very high research and I need my research to win this war. So I'm going to rely on that high map move in order to like actually take these battles where I want them.
Right.
The other thing is that this is actually one province in from where their border was, so he might have felt safe doing it just because of that.
Right.
But vaettiheim did attack it, as we saw, of course, and therefore we now see that this army is exposed. So you're completely right. This is a perfect idle drop target.
Right. The other thing that's risky about doing this in general, there's a value to doing it, like you were just articulating. It's one of the things Pangaea can do well, but it's risky. Like vaettiheim, there's stacks that vaettiheim could roll around that are kind of casual, like 6 mages and 40 troops that would stack wipe this. And it's even without doing foul vapors, like they can just straight up melee this to death.
Yeah, but those are relatively high commitment stacks in terms of mage count, and they're not something that vaettiheim would most likely deploy as a deep strike, right? So it would need to have already been in position because you would have needed to stealth all of those mages onto a hostile Pangaean province and then attack into there, right?
Right.
So with that in mind, I think that Pangaea is most likely didn't think that was very likely, even if he did consider like what vaettiheim can do with their like mini mage balls.
Right.
But I think that this is like as you pointed out, this is something that Pangaea has done multiple times already. And this is something that's going to be riskier and riskier as the game goes on.
Yep.
And Magic Phase becomes more viable.
Right. Yeah. And it's just one of the things to point out. Vaettiheim as a nation is very good at killing non-mage supported troops. Very, very good at it. I think they're probably one of the best nations in the game with
Lemuria.
Yeah, Lemuria probably. So yeah, but behind Lemuria, they're so good at killing unsupported, like no mage supported troops. So anyway, like berserkers are so good against dryad hoplites. It's like a bunch of things. The Seder snipers is a little tricky, but with a little bit of arrow bait, you can do it pretty easily. So
yeah, once you have those terms of buffing, which I mean, as we've been talking about, is
right.
absolutely something that's within vaettiheim's grasp. Then yeah, you can absolutely get to the point where you can shower in crossbow bolts.
Yeah. We have a successful raid by Vaettiheim down here on top of a Pangaean fort, and this is a bit more commitment. We've got
the one that he had said was going to gem bait as well.
Oh,
so
right.
If
oh my goodness.
Yeah. This is the foul vapors stack. So we actually did see the Dryad succeed there, which is interesting. So the only reason that vaettiheim's guys are sticking around is he's got that one more hag there.
Right. By dryads, you mean the
sorry, the most of the mages
harpies.
ran away. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the harpies were effective. Most of the mages ran away. But the one mage that stayed was the foul vapors guy.
Yeah. Was that PD harpies or was that? Yeah, it was PD harpies.
Yeah. And that's a mercenary with the fire drakes.
This is definitely, if you're going to be fighting, I don't know if I've ever really fought, like had a really hard fight against a late age Pangaea. You know, like I probably vultured them or something. I can't think of a time I've ever really fought them, but it's like.
Fought them as Arco.
These harpies are, like they really affect, you have to have a good plan for them when you're doing these raids.
Yeah. As Arco, it's not that big of a deal because you have like a bunch of heavily armored troops, so you basically just need like a backline,
right?
And then you're fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you're trying to have mages in their own square, the way that vaettiheim is doing it, they're absolutely susceptible to these flyers.
Right, and you can see this one he put in a tile with other dudes worked out fine, so he probably just needs to do that. We'll see if they adjust the strategy next turn, but they should be putting mages in tiles with troops.
So the reason that he did that is that that's the Foul Vapors caster, so he wants that one to receive buffs.
Right.
And I think that his other mages might even be scripted to retreat. The scout's definitely scripted to retreat. Yeah. So, okay. So it's not that the mages ran away, it's that they were actually scripted for that. So that was my misinterpretation.
So he loses one Gaija and a witch. Now, likely, we can check real quick. I think the Gaija was probably twice-born. Nope.
Yeah, the ones that he was using for the deep strike raids, those ones were twice-born.
Yeah.
But this one, his like slightly higher commitment stack, it looks like he actually was hoping that it would work out.
Right. He was probably scripting to retreat. He probably wasn't expecting that guy to die. So
it's interesting though, because like given my understanding of Vaettiheim's player, I would imagine that he tested these fights. So I'm surprised that the Harpies were as effective as they were. Because like you can kind of like if you actually do test that battle, then you see that the Harpies are going to go land in your mage core.
Right. Yeah. These are understandable, where the Harpies were also a bit of a nuisance, but he didn't expect the high PD. This one, you are right. You'd think he would have kind of figured out the Harpies would get his dudes. Anyway, he gets the fort lockdown, which is nice. It's a really high-income province, like a super high-income province. So
he also had an assassin there.
Oh, right. So that's even better.
We didn't get to see that, but yeah, he told us that had been assassinating this turn.
Right. The problem is now it can't assassinate this coming turn. So we see 2 more raids over here. And again...
Oh, that's Pangaea's hero, the Harpy Queen.
Oh.
She free spawns Harpies, but her most important trait is being an air mage for an A and EA.
Right.
In LA, a little less exciting, but still nice. You know, she's air too, so she can do some magic phase stuff.
Do sages get air? I forget.
Yeah, they get air. They get air 1.
Okay. Oh, the hag has been, oh my goodness.
Yeah, just Harpies.
Now the risk here is actually that they don't damage any of the berserkers.
Yeah, and they indeed do not, so they all get off the field.
Yeah.
Yeah, only one like actual death, but in practice, you know, you lose all those guys if they don't have a way to retreat. Actually, I think Vaettiheim did take a problem supporting this one, though.
Yeah, I think Vaettiheim basically just assumed there would be hardly any resistance. So, and it was kind of what we got from their message, like a very light elfing is what he said. So,
all twice-born guys and all expecting to hit 6 PD.
Right. But while these individual losses aren't much, you know, I think they're each about like 250 gold. When you add them all up, he's lost a fair bit.
It's 120, right? Because it's 10 guys at 12 gold each.
But how much are the hags? I mean, the Gaija, they're one.
They're all twice born.
Okay, well, I'm counting their cost, but.
Oh, okay, yeah. If you count their cost, it's about 250 each.
Yeah.
I was thinking that since Vaettiheim does actually get a lot of value out of the twice-born versions because of the morale and stuff, that like he doesn't mind losing them at this point.
Yeah, that's fair.
And they're still stealthy in that second form as well.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool second form. It's not nearly as good of a thug, but, well, in combat, but stealthy is really valuable, so...
Yeah, so that guy's going underwater, unless Pangaea magic phases it, and I would imagine that would be successful as well.
Right.
Because that guy's definitely geared up enough to beat Province defense.
Pangaea also has gone underwater before, so they could, like, Ring of Water Breathing, you know, to meet him underwater if they anticipated that.
That's true, actually. And there are a lot of things that work on those inanimate constructs. Like just a shatter guy, like a pan with shatter should be able to take that guy out, no problem.
Yeah. Okay, so that's about the extent of the rating. In terms of the actual troop movement, like for armies, we've got a big pile here.
The dog walker.
Wait, where? Oh.
The queen of the underworld.
That's funny. And then we've got a pile of crossbows here. So this is the more threatening stack with the Remvetti. And he's threatening to consolidate these guys on top of this throne. And that's one of the really nice things about having raided the PD is he can go ahead and do that.
Right. And he can, and because it's one of Pangaea's forts, Pan can't even magic phase on top of it.
Right. And this Queen of the Underworld is actually really important because this is the air death access that Vaettiheim gets out of the bag. And it's a hero. Right. So this, when did they say they would have the Evo 6? I think it's like 2 turns away. Turn after. Okay, so next turn.
So next turn, yeah.
So he
I would imagine
use them to fight here, I don't think.
I would imagine that they twice-borned her, though.
Right. If they twice-born, this is also potentially a thug that could kill this army. It's really dangerous exposing this right here. It's not like the
Um,
best thug, but it's probably possible.
the other nice thing is that because she has glamour, we can see her because we have like the magic scout guys, but Pangaea most likely can't.
Right. And the interesting thing is that if there's this is what Pangaea is opening themselves up to. If vaettiheim magic phase kills this army, then it's very likely that Pangaea consolidates their armies here. If they do, then they'll fight this army without this army present. And if they consolidate their armies here, then it's a big, nasty surprise for Pangaea. The risk of them doing that is it's a kind of predictable move for them to consolidate the armies here. Oh, no, it's not a risk. I was going to say the Pangaean god could show up, but it can't. It would go inside the fort.
Right. The one thing that Pangaea has going for them, though, is that they can't really be gem burned because all their mages are coming out of forts.
Right.
So whatever Pangaea is going to be doing in terms of their mage support, vaettiheim can't see yet, and they also can't interrupt it.
Right. But fighting an army with only half the people present, or half the troops present, if you've got a plan,
Definitely not what you want to do.
Yeah. So it's an opportunity.
Especially because it looks like most of the dryads are there. So that's like actually what I would imagine to be most of Pangaea's front line.
Right. There's some Centaur Cataphract here, but yeah, it looks like a larger. I mean, this is the larger or the smaller army as well. So
yeah. So what we'd seen from Pangaea in terms of how his armies are set up is that the Dryad hoplites are the guys getting buffs, which makes sense, right? Because they're 4 to a square, right? So they get a lot more value out of luck and stuff. So if those guys are what he's intending to be his, like, bodyguarded front line, and the cataphracts are the guys going around, then if he tries to consolidate, and as you say, that army gets jumped, then suddenly Pangaea's going to battle with, like, literally his entire center exposed.
Yeah, that would be amazing if that happens. I mean, not for Pangaea, but for us and for the viewers. But yeah, okay, so otherwise, pretty low commitment poking. Let's now go look at the message from Gath, and we'll go look at the Marignon conflict. Immediately after I said I won't ever use a Godal with a Vine Shield, I'm doing it again. But now the reason is lifelong protection assassins, 4 of which I don't see now, who Vine Shield Godal reliably kills, otherwise he may die. The only semi-reliable way to defeat assassins I have found is Sayer Bodyguard, and of course, in parentheses, 19 scouts that are already parked in 230 waiting for their life mission.
Yeah, tanking assassination. That's honestly the most efficient way to tank these kind of like luxury thugged out assassin builds, because you can't get that many LLP assassins, right? I mean, that's 40 slaves.
Yeah.
So yeah, having just like throwaway scouts is way more efficient than anything else that you can do. But he also makes a great point that Vine Shield is basically the one counter to imps. Any other like shield type that you might try to use doesn't have nearly the same impact. Vine Shield tangles them up, and they like that basically keeps your guy from having any trouble.
Yeah, though he will still be in melee with them, so you can get poked by the. Well, I guess if they have a bow or something, you could maybe be worried about. But for a second, I was thinking mages would cast stuff at you, but with Marignon, they're using the assassins who aren't mages. So
right, these are just dryads. Troubadours can. Well, no, they're not mages. I guess they're seducers. I was thinking for some reason I had them mixed up with bards.
No, they've got the legit assassins. They've got these guys, right? These guys.
You know, that's what they're using. I was just thinking of like who they might have that's a mage, and I'm thinking, well, troubadours, but no, that's like the mage version is a different nation.
Right.
And those guys are just seducers. Yeah. So with Marignon, the only thing that they can do that's threatening is they have some sort of like armor negating bow, like the bow of thunder.
Right.
But even then, I think Gas Bless has shock resistance.
Yeah, I mean, there's the E crossbow, which is only 5 pearls, and there's
the problem with ethereal crossbow is it's MRN,
right?
So you like against like
it's
a Godol, it's going to run out of it's going to run out of ammo before it kills them.
Yeah, or something like the Piercer. I mean, there's a few different things that may or may not work. It's going to be tricky.
Piercer, Golden Arbalest,
right?
There's a couple,
and I mean, I'm sure it's a really interesting assassin game when you know you're going to be fighting a Vine Shield, something thugged out Godal, because there probably are ways to kill it with an assassin, but you would need to know that's what you're doing and have prepared for it, and that's hard to do. So I guess the other nations have fewer options to deal with this cancer, so I'm probably fine. I'm also risking the Gadol attacking 253, but I don't expect much opposition there. However, a single lifelong protection assassin on defense may rout the Gadol and he may die retreating, but we keep believing.
Yeah, you could. That's one of the reasons why I like LLP so much is how versatile it is. It's the perfect assassination weapon, naturally because it's summoning these imps constantly, but it's also great in battles. And part of that is just the defensive advantage of having this never-ending stream of chaff. Like
Right,
basically a single LLP can kill a Phoenix Pyre Golem just because, defensively you turn timer it.
right. Not much to comment about 230 action. It will be quite it will be quite obvious and hopefully will work. P.S. I can only imagine how crazy the bid war for sappers is right now. Luckily, I don't need to be a part of it. Who ended up getting the sappers? They go to Pangaea,
And yeah.
who said they took it with like a 250 bid. So how about that?
Was it Pangaea that was saying that most other people didn't need them? I think it was vaettiheim saying most people didn't need them.
Oh, you're right. Okay. So I guess Pan
Yeah.
took it. Yeah.
And it makes sense for Pan to take it as well because they're the only other nation. I mean, Owl actually pointed that out. They're the only other nation that has castle level maximum.
Right.
So they actually need the Mason to get over that hump.
Right. Okay, so let's take a look at what happened. So here, Pangaea attacks Marignon.
This is magic phase for gem burning. And this is something that I
Oh my
suggested
God.
is one of the big advantages of this alliance is that, if you gem burn, then or if you're working with an ally, you have an additional gem burn, which can be extremely high value. I mean, we're seeing that here.
Pangaea planned. I think this was planned by. Oh no, because it's water elementals too. I was thinking the air elementals may actually be planned in case there was a gem burn, because I think they're going to kill this guy. This guy wants to cast returning, but I don't think he's going to be allowed to.
Yeah, he's most likely going to die. But I mean, even then, as far as commitments go, this is very modest for what he's getting out of it.
I mean, it's 30 gems. It was a stone.
Generally, if you're gem burning like this, you expect to lose the guy. The returning is kind of like your hope, but
yeah,
you wouldn't put money on it. Oh, here we go.
So Gath rides out behind it, but there's nobody here. So
Marignon regular phase moved away.
That's right. So he killed the gem burn dude and then left when there was going to be a big battle. The only thing that could have made it better was if he summoned maybe a couple fewer air elementals and didn't summon those water elementals. But that's hilarious. I mean, we can take a look at the mage commitment Gath is bringing here. Not much. Flaming arrows. A sling. Somehow I feel like this is very fitting.
The sling of accuracy?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's sort of anti-fitting, right? Because
Right.
Gath was the side that had Goliath.
Goliath, yeah.
We actually added Goliath as a hero.
Oh, nice. That's actually
He has
really
no
funny.
helmet.
That's
He has
funny.
no helmet and no head slot for obvious reasons.
That's funny. All right, so this is probably Wind Guide, I was guessing.
Yeah, that would make sense.
And then
So Wing got it, flaming arrows.
We're air elementals. This looks like Curse of Stones.
Really? I was gonna get because he's got the
Pengear,
piercing stuff.
yeah.
Yeah. I don't
and
like
people who watch my
um,
people who watch my YouTube channel have seen Demosthenes use it to great effect. So
I've tried using it several times on different nations in different settings, and literally the only time that I've seen it actually be worth it was against a communion that was very borderline to breaking itself.
yeah.
It was within just a couple fatigue, and Curse of Stone spam pushed it over the edge. Every single other situation which I've used it, it was basically worthless.
Yeah, that was my experience too until I saw Demosthenes use it, and he just mopped somebody with it. The trick to using it is you need to cast it turn 1. You can't do it turn 3 or turn 2 or whenever. It has to be literally a turn 1 cast. And then you have to have a ton of pin gear. And if you do both of those things, it's pretty devastating, especially if they don't put up anti-magic.
Do you need multiple casts?
No, just you need one guy with high pin gear to cast it turn 1. And if they don't do anti-magic turn 1, it will fatigue out it ruins an army. It is really strong. What it will do is it's going to affect more than half, at least half the army. And they're going to then come in waves. You're going to have the first wave, especially if you can get up to the point where it gets 60% of the army. You're going to have 40% of the army run forward, and they're going to get butchered and defeated in detail. And the
Right,
second
because
part
everywhere.
is by
Yeah.
the time they get there, they're going to be fatigued out. They'll be at like 100 fatigue when they show up, and then they'll get butchered and die. It's really strong potentially.
That's really
But
cool.
if you don't do it just right, like if you do it turn 3 after they have anti-magic up, the thing is, if you don't do it at the very beginning, not only were they more likely to have anti-magic up, but they're going to be farther across the field. So they're not going to get defeated in detail. And the way Curse of Stones work is you take fatigue when you move. So once they're already in melee, the fatigue you get from it isn't huge. So
That makes sense, yeah, because like part of what you're gambling on or relying on to deal the damage with this spell is the movement speed slow, not just the actual fatigue effect.
yes. And the fatigue effect is also related to the movement. So yeah, that can be really good. If they're on hold and attack, you can, and they don't do anti-magic, you can do it like turn 2, but otherwise. And then with ranged armies, it's not as effective because obvious reasons.
Right, because they're kind of moving as a blob anyways,
Right.
not really doing all that much.
Right. Okay, so this I think is the province where Gath is sending one of his guys.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
One of his super combatants.
Super combatant.
And what's Marignon out there? Oh, he's got a lot of mages.
Quickness cast on a bunch of these guys. These guys with quickness and moss body are going to be no joke. I'm not sure they're going to get in past the imps though. Yeah. Oh, some of them are in. Oh,
and he's got lifelong protection. Yeah,
but they're getting into the front tile, and this is the tile that Gath is going to target. But they're pretty tough. One of them has luck on them still, and they all have quickness. Yeah,
between the advance and cast and the lifelong protection, unless this guy makes it to turn timer, he's gonna die.
Yeah.
Although, yeah, he doesn't really have that much offense against him. Because these are humans, so like Vine Shield actually still is messing them up.
Yeah. Wait, did this guy have cold resistance? He's got 15 cold resistance. Oh, so he has it in his bless too. Cold 10. So normally this guy would be frozen hearting him.
Are his other mages not on advance? Because I thought I saw more mages.
Oh no.
No, they're not. Okay.
Would she would be able to do? No, there's not much she's going to be doing useful.
Yeah.
Not him either.
I was thinking like Steel Breath, but like honestly, the best they can do is like Starfires.
Yeah.
At least that's armor negating.
That's true.
Okay, yeah, this guy's probably going to make it to turn timer then.
Well, let's pick up the speed then. I'm going to put the turns on. Oh, he is getting hit by desiccation. Oh, his fatigue is neutral though.
Yeah, no, his fatigue's actually positive, I think.
Yeah, he's at 0, so.
Yeah, so he has more reinvigoration than his encumbrance. Yeah.
Right, even with desiccation hitting him.
Well, desiccation's not really going to last that long because his MR is great too. So he's going to be like desiccated for a turn, and then he'll recover and get that fatigue right back.
So he's he's retreating now because we're at 90. Will he escape? Turn 110, these guys are retreating, and he runs off.
Yeah, he was near the back, and given that there were so many guys entangled, I was reasonably confident that we weren't going to see the final turn timer.
Yeah. So he's escaped here, and the losses on Marignon's side, not that big of a deal. Though some of the Marignon mages retreated, and they're much more likely, because they don't have as great a morale, they're much more likely to have failed to retreat and run off and died. So...
Yeah, but one of the I would assume that most of them actually made it out because he's got 2 neighboring provinces. So if they fail the morale check, there's still a 1 in 3 chance that they survive.
Yeah. Marignon moves here. Takes this out. Takes this out.
Yeah, those are mage heavy stacks. So he's definitely committed to this like buff strategy, where when he moves out, even though he has like, relatively low troop commitments, he's basically relying on the fact that they're actually supported. I would assume that the guy to the south, because it's only 1 mage there and it's not one of those buff mages, the one immediately south of his cap.
Oh, yeah, this one.
So that was a Godic Adept. So if that's not an
assassin here too, so he almost certainly is lifelong.
Oh, he's got lifelong protection.
Yeah.
And it's an astro item. Okay, that makes sense. I was thinking like those guys might be doing elementals because they're not as great buff mages. But then, yeah, no, it's just an astral guy. So he is in fact a buff mage.
One thing I'll just say I'm disappointed in is these devils are some of the best counter raiders Like they're just so good for low commitment counter rating in small numbers. I'm really disappointed they're sticking around here.
Yeah, I think that Marignon is thinking of them as like death stat guys, where you need like critical mass in order to go smash an enemy army. But as you keep pointing out, that's not the only thing that they're good for.
Right. And he's so far away from being able to get a death stack. You know, like a death stack's like 150 plus. I mean,
yeah, no, you need a pile of them, right? Because you
Yeah.
need enough flyers to completely surround the enemy.
right.
And then you would deploy those with Bloodlust and some LLPs and all that good stuff.
Right.
But yeah, he's very far away from that point.
Right. And like
Although he has
that guy would have murdered this Gadol, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
I'm not
6 or 7 of them.
so sure. Yeah, I'm honestly not so sure. I think that like it would have helped, obviously, right? Because his defense got destroyed and he got like gripped and melded and so on. But
Tempered flesh, iron
mean, his
skin.
protect-
It'll take me just 1 second.
Yeah.
Let's test it. All right, guys. So we've gotten this set up. Here's going to be the anti-Gadol squad, which it's really an anti-counter rating squad. It could be Gadols or a bunch of other things. It's going to be a bunch like 10 hold and attack rear devils with 2 lifelong protection supports. They're going to get buffed with strength of giants and anti-magic.
And part of why this is actually very flexible, even though like it's obviously in our case designed to beat this particular Gadol, it's something that actually can work well against those Satyr squads and other low commitment raiding parties, because the lifelong protections will have the imps engage first,
Yeah.
before the hold and attack devils actually like get into the fray. So even though the devils aren't receiving very many defensive buffs, and normally part of why devils like either require critical mass or are best deployed like in relatively specific circumstances, is that they're kind of vulnerable because they have relatively low base protection and
Yeah.
no armor. They don't necessarily take defensive buffs all that well, so it's easier to kill them. So they're almost kind of like a melee glass cannon guys.
Right.
But when you accompany them with lifelong protections, then the low commitment raiding parties at least don't bring enough damage for you to take serious attrition when you're using these devils.
Yeah, it's also worth noting, even one devil, if you have undead leadership for them, on attack rear, hold and attack rear, is going to just give you like a commander sniping threat that low commitment attacks will a lot of times get messed up by. Like, they're very, very, very good counter raiders. And I have no idea, this may not work, but we're only going to show one, so either it works or it doesn't.
Yeah, so the thing that I wasn't sure about is that when we saw the actual like Gath guy in combat, by the time that he was fighting Magnion's units, he had 30 protection and temper flesh up.
Right.
So his protection was so high, I'm not convinced that the devils can actually kill him.
Right, which we're going to test here, because we did script that first, and yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Oh, he evaporated.
Yeah, he got
My
fucking wrecked.
God.
That's what I was talking about. These guys are really fucking good on counter rating.
I did not expect that. I was thinking like, oh, well, they're going to deal like, 1 or 2 damage on average, but no,
Right.
they destroyed him. Okay,
We'll do
I
it.
was dead wrong.
Let's watch again, because I think what you're going to see here, he's got he didn't get a chance to do his bless because we can't get everything in the first 3 rounds. But the bless would give him poison resistance. The poison resistance isn't going to matter. Watch what happens to his fatigue.
No, he got blessing up.
Oh, he did? Okay. Fatigue is 30. Well, it should be higher. Maybe he's big enough that it's not going to matter. Oh, no, they just straight up killed him.
Yeah, he just got obliterated. Like this wasn't even like armor negating hits killing him. This was just like high rolls.
But this thing, the paralyzing poison on this is really intense. Fatigue reduced for large targets. I don't know how much fatigue he would take from this. If you know, put it in the comments. But this is like another, like, even if you survive the first round, like tanking these guys for 30 turns, that fatigue damage starts stacking up. So,
right. And once you get into the high fatigue, that's when you get those armor negating hits, which we've been talking, or armor breaking hit. I don't remember what the term is. Armor defeating hits, I think. But yeah.
And once you start, if you're at 100 fatigue and you have these guys pounding you with these 29 damage tridents, it's going to be a bad day. So, all right. So I'm going to pull the game back up.
Clearly would have worked. Yeah, clearly would have worked.
All right. And we're back. We got the game pulled up. So, Sai, you were saying you've used devils a lot.
Yeah, so I like devils. I use devils pretty frequently. I love the legions version of it.
Right.
So I actually throw devils around all the time, and I just haven't seen them kill SCs quite as effectively as we just saw right there. Yeah, Infernal Forces is great in part just because it's so efficient for siege attack because those imps are so useful.
Yep.
So I love that spell, and I love like using devils in part because of their heat resistance, so they survive flames from the sky spam,
Mm-hmm.
and in part just because like offensively they're so great. But I always assume that they're best as like a critical mass like strike force thing. They're
Yeah.
kind of like the generic Ocelotl, and the barbed tail kind of makes them like such that you can't counter them within army thugs the way that you can fiends of darkness, depending on how they're set up.
Yep.
But I had not expected them to just obliterate a super combatant that quickly.
Yeah.
That was incredible. And
Yeah,
guess-
sadly I did not figure that out through intuition and theory crafting. I figured that out by losing super combatants to them. So it's a hard learned
I've
lesson.
seen a Tartarian survive against devils, but I think that's just like at a much higher tier.
Yeah.
And I think it also had like an artifact on it.
Yeah, and we did those buffs we put on them were significant. Strength of Giants and anti-magic made a big difference there. We didn't test it without, but I expect without those buffs on them, it would have been a lot closer.
Well, the Strength of Giants was the big one. Anti-magic, like we didn't see any of them get tangled.
Yeah. They do have pretty good MR by default, but with anti-magic on it, they don't get it. They're not going to worry about that Fine Shield very much. So all in all, pretty good turn for Marignon. Pangaea is backing out of the war. Gath has revealed at least significant portions of their script and what they're planning to do, and they've lost the super combatant. And to add...
Well, the super combatant retreated.
Oh, that's right. It retreated. That's fair. So they didn't lose a super combatant. Okay, so I think we've covered pretty much everything having to do with this conflict in this part of the world.
The one thing that I want to add is that Marignon, by doing that mass counter raiding that he did, is very close to their original borders. They have, let me see, like 6 provinces to retake from Pangaea, and like 1 more plus a fort to retake from Gath. So as far as surviving a 1v2, they're doing much better than anyone else that we've seen so far.
Yeah, that's a great point. And if they kill this Gath army, they might be on their way towards winning a 1v1. Draw up some borders you're okay with with Pangaea, or get Gath to back out and go fight Pangaea while it seems like everybody's going to be fighting Pangaea. Or not everybody,
I mean,
but they were worried about
vaettiheim at least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe Tianchi too. We haven't heard from them, but...
Well, Tianchi or Erythia had said that they're going to be fighting Pythium.
Right. But that's Erythia. They probably are, but they might switch targets. Who knows?
Yeah, and given that Marignon still has all those devils, I could definitely see them retaking their forts from Pangaea.
Yeah.
If Pangaea isn't placing a serious commitment to defend them.
That's true. Okay, so it's an interesting turn. Hope. The candle of hope gleams bright for Marignon.
The one thing, though, is that because they were withdrawing that army off that fort, like their regular phase moved away, I think that they made a mistake by allowing themselves to be gem burned that way.
Yeah, definitely to the degree they got gem burned. And that's going to suck for them some, for sure.
It's like, if you know that
you can't fight.
Away,
yeah.
Yes, even if you don't know that you're being gem burned, if you're
Actually,
moving away and
there's one scenario where that was good, because notice he summoned water elementals. What are water elementals really good at? Killing super combatants. If there was a super combatant that went on top of this fort and won, he would have had to have fought that with his army.
Yeah, okay. I can see that, yeah. Because Gath could have regular phase moved through enemy territory onto it because of the high mat move on Godols. So yeah, I can see that.
Oh, if it moved... Oh, no, was there a ping on top? No. Okay, so this fort was owned by Marignon last time. A normal phase move wouldn't have triggered it. Normal phase thing, the guy would have gone inside the fort. But a magic phase move from Gath, which Marignon could expect. Marignon doesn't know Gath doesn't have a ton of magic phase Gadals left.
Right. Yeah.
Would have triggered it. Okay. Anyway. Yeah, you're right. The gem burning hurts, though. Because this is now the second time they've had, or maybe even third time they've had a big gem bait.
I think only the second. But even then, that really hurts given Marignon's small size.
Right.
Their gem income just isn't up there.
Right. And these aren't casual gem baits where you're baiting out some protection buffs. These are elemental dumps. So. Okay, next.
The one thing is that Marignon hasn't spent a bunch of fire gems. So that's one more elemental type that they might still have in the bank.
That's true. Okay, coming up, it looks like we have a battle in Agartha. Oh gosh. So this is
And
one
it
of the
looks like
multi-heroes.
Agartha won.
Wait, what?
Wait, how did Agartha win this?
I mean, clearly this guy's doing fire elementals.
Is that enough? I mean, if Agartha won, it must be.
There's a
but-
few things. They're fighting in a cave, so these guys get a pretty big stat penalty. But is that enough?
I mean, like we saw that Agartha owned the province, so it must be.
Well, let's see how it
Wow.
happens. 2,
Yeah.
3 fire elementals. Will we get a 4th? 4 fire elementals
No,
is a lot. No, it's just 3.
Yeah. Do these guys have protection cast on them? Do they have fire vulnerability?
They do.
Yeah. Okay. That might make a difference. But even then, like we've seen these guys chop up fire elementals, no problem. I guess it must be a matter of critical. Okay, so they killed one.
Oh,
okay,
they're fatiguing out. Oh no!
right because of the fire
Yeah, some of them
vulnerability. Yeah.
Yeah. That might be the
I think
worst part about protection buffs. Wait,
Oh, he got it. What? Does he get HP routed?
there's Incinerate getting cast. Most of the guys have run.
He must. Okay, he got HP routed.
Wow.
Wow. That was very close.
All right, give this man a gold star. All right, he has
He
a.
needs to be renamed. He is a generic random generator.
I know Aaron likes naming his commanders. If he doesn't rename this guy with some cheeky as hell name, I'm going to be very disappointed.
That's a hero and a half.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that actually like did so much more damage than I would have expected.
Oh man, gold star for this dude. What a badass! Oh my
It
god.
wasn't just like some gimmicky route. Like there were a serious number of mages there.
Yeah. People saying fire magic is bad. Hashtag something.
Hashtag Mbar.
That
I
is,
actually
that is
do-
crazy. I'm legit surprised from that. I mean, that is like 13 mages.
Yeah, no, I mean it. Not even just like the mage count. Like I would have expected that many competences to just chop them up, and look, they kind of did. I mean, they did kill all the fire elementals eventually, but the number of losses that they sustained was just incredible.
I think it's the heat aura, right? Because like while you get for the damage side, let's pull the battle back up. For the damage side, the bonus protection you get from
It does offset it.
it offsets a lot of the additional damage you're going to take from the fire susceptibility. Not fully, but a lot of it. But what this really wrecks you on is the heat aura, which is armor negating, so it doesn't care that you got the protection buff.
Right. So you're taking basically +5 fatigue for every heat or roll that hits you.
And I think what happened, and we can't see this by looking at the unit stats, is once their melee and their fatigue starts going up, they're starting to get major penalties to attack and defense, which normally might not be a huge deal, but you add that to the penalties they're getting from darkness. And now it's like they can't hit this guy anymore.
It's kind of like in an earlier episode, it kind of talked about like how the secret strength of Fireball is that it's basically like a Stellar Cascades.
Yeah.
Like we're seeing that here, where these guys, they get the attack penalty, so it takes them just that little bit longer to kill those elementals.
I think actually, looking at it again, I think actually they would have lost it even worse. They died here at the end by the mages. Like the mages, there's a frozen heart cast and a cold blast that comes out that knocks the shit out of these guys. So right now it's skeletons, but look what happens when they start getting in.
Well, they're immune to Frozen Heart because they're inanimate.
Oh,
It's just the cold.
was it just a cold blast then?
Yeah. The heals are helping. It's Starfires.
Starfires, and then that cold flare, yeah, 20 damage.
Yeah. Cold blast.
Then another one.
Underrated spell.
Yeah. How about that?
Very unexpected victory. I don't even think that Agartha expected that to win. I think Agartha expected just to kill some protection buffed combatenses and then wound up winning.
Yeah. Oh man. I need to title the episode based on that. I think that's the most exciting thing that's happened so far.
The Mbar, hero of Agartha.
In part.
I actually do kind of like when generic commanders do something crazy, like how you have the Ballad of Shage because you have an unnamed horse tribe commander killing like 3 assassins and a heliophage.
Yeah. That's fun. So it looks like what happened here is I think this was Agartha's province the turn before, and TNG has come into Vulture it, and Agartha didn't have money for PD or chose not to put it down. I'm guessing didn't have money.
You can check if you look at the turn order, just hit I on the province, and then you can see who took it. Yeah, you were right. So Pythium took it, and then TNG bumped them. But we've kind of seen this happen before, actually, in that TNG's been like cruising in to scoop up some Agarthan provinces, and I believe that it was Utgard that bumped Pythium before.
Right. Yeah, Utgard with a pretty intentional bump. It's one of the advantages, people hate when dudes vulture, but if you accept that people vulture, sometimes it's nice if you're conquering somebody to be like, hey, I'm finishing up, do you want province X, Y, or Z?
Yeah, because then you're in a conversation and then you don't have these bumps.
Right. And
At least not without like hostility.
Right. Probably not worth doing it if you don't see any of that player's forces on the border, but with TNG, they had a decent amount of stuff over here, so might have been worth engaging them.
I mean, this is so close to Midgard that like TNG would have had a bunch of forces there regardless.
Right. But
so
this is
I completely agree.
Because they not only lost the troops, which were significant, but they lost 4 mages.
Yeah, and the Serpent Priests are not cheap.
Right.
Those are like higher tier as far as Pythium mages go.
And this also makes sense from TNG's side in that
if he's planning on fighting Pythium next, then having a couple like air quote accidental bumps is absolutely in his favor.
Right. And also, Pythium didn't want to help him out, which makes sense because they're engaged in a war with Agartha, but they didn't want to help him out against Arethia, right? So TNG's also, they're like a little bit salty towards Pythium, which doesn't make sense. I mean, Pythium has to finish the war with Agartha, but...
Yeah, I don't think that TNG has any reason to be salty against Pythium. I think that they have reason to be salty against Shababa, who straight up told both of the players that approached him, I'll go fight whoever loses.
Yeah. Okay.
Which, points for honesty, but...
Right. Yeah, but they're like, maybe let's not mash our armies into each other so Zabala can kill, one or both of us. Okay, so cheeky move here.
That's like totally in character for the player, though.
Okay. So
this is a straight up admit that he'll fight whoever loses the battle.
The sum of this is very bad for Pythium because Pythium's now had this army route. Now most of the mages will have survived. And he's lost this force now too. And all of a sudden, it's not looking like Agartha is 100% doomed.
Agartha is still 100% doomed, but that it's going to take him longer to kill them. That's how I'd put it.
I mean, no, they're not going to be winning the game, right? And they probably won't be seeing who wins the game. So they're doomed in that sense. But if TNG and Arethia go on Pythium soon, then it probably won't be Pythium killing Agartha. If you feel me.
Yeah, it's just a matter of timing, like how long it takes for Agartha to die. Also, they got the Ageless Ulm in their capital.
Ooh.
So that's Agartha's god.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's spicy.
Yeah. We didn't see. Oh, can you check their battle there?
Yeah,
see if they
have
blessed. Because now we can see if they have an incarnate bless or not. Servant of Courage. Okay, so we don't get to see. Oh, okay. They have FSR. Okay, so they have Earth 5.
Yeah, that's all we know.
Okay. Well, no, we know now that that's their entire plus.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so that's interesting.
But what I meant is they could have minor paths that we don't know about. Right?
Oh, right. Yeah. We know they have Earth 5. We don't know what their water level is at. We just know that they have water underneath 4.
Right.
And they might have nature.
But the Ageless Ulm isn't ultra cheap, right? So they might have sprung to give him like Moss Body as well, right? Or something.
Or Foul Vapors, yeah. I would go N2 just because the booster is very valuable. But given that Aaron is very comfortable with trading with other people, he might not have done that.
Yeah.
I tend to like to try to make my builds such that they can be self-reliant. So with Agartha, I think that it's very valuable to get either like a nature booster or like something along those lines where you can kind of like boost one of the like paths that you don't generally have great access to. And nature in particular is valuable just because you need N2 for poison resistance.
Yeah. Okay. Very cool. I think that's it for us. I mean, we can take a look over here at Jomon, see what's happening. Oh, no, it's not it. Wait.
Yeah, we didn't. So we did actually see a couple battles. So outside of this one, so this is our.
Oh
Oh,
my
this is
goodness.
a big battle. This is the battle.
Oh my goodness.
I was gonna say like, oh well, they got this battle and a couple other minor ones. Then like, oh, actually, Jomon is tiny, and this is their entire army. This is the
So
fight.
this
Yeah,
is everybody.
they
All
got
right. We have,
they got the Gun King, they got the Shugenjas. Yeah, okay.
and in some ways,
Let's
this
do
is
it.
the Jomon wet dream. They're fighting Arco in the clump formation. Let's see what happens.
Okay, so Jomon has a bunch of the troops on bodyguard. That's what I'm seeing first, which is not what I expected. Because from Jomon's perspective, you kind of want your guys doing advanced and cast stuff.
Oh no.
Because you already saw that Arco's doing that blob. So you want your mages advancing and doing some Evo stuff.
He's also
Um,
got some bad Chillara interactions over here.
Yeah, he's got all of his ghosts kind of tied up in his mage wall in the center. Where's his Ghost King?
He's part of this. He's right here.
Okay, there he is. Okay, so he's set up for thugging, maybe? What?
I don't know.
What's he doing? Well, I mean,
He's
obviously
casting
not thugging
Flare.
stuff.
Maybe.
That's not what he wants to be casting.
All right, so we have
Okay.
Solar Brilliance coming out. Who's the caster of that? It is a Mystic, so that is being cast by Arco.
Solar Eclipse.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
Solar Eclipse.
Owl
Sorry.
Vapor is also from Arco.
Oh goodness. So this is revealed tech. I don't know if Jomon knew about this. I mean, it's something Arco can do. Who cast it?
One of the Orphic Mystics.
Oh right. Okay, yeah. So we're not sure which one, but
Yeah, Orphic Mystics kind of propel LA Arco from like B tier to high A tier, to use the tier list terminology.
Yeah.
Because Arco is already a very good nation in any era for different reasons. Like in EA, they also have great sacreds, but in NA, they still just have the incredible research advantage of the super efficient mystics.
right.
But in LA, they get the addition of basically filling in any path that they're missing from these Orphic mystics, which, while not able to join the communions natively, do provide basically every major battlefield spell that Arco was otherwise wanting in the other eras. So by bringing these guys along and having one of them with either, like, I would assume that it's boosted somehow, because I don't think they get N2 water. Let me double check that, actually. They might actually just have that. But yeah, it gives them foul vapors, which is not something that like one typically associates with Arco. Oh
Right.
no, yeah, they actually can roll N2 water one. Because I knew they had two linked randoms. But yeah, one of them's the sorcery random, one of them's the elemental random. So yeah. But yeah, so with this isn't something that one typically like thinks of with Arco, but it's absolutely within their scope.
Yeah. Now I don't think they cast Foul Vapor. I mean, Serpent's Blessing, because I saw like the elephants don't have poison resistance, but most of these troops do. He's gotten it certainly on the core center here. And that's also, not only is it going to block Foul Vapors, which they cast themselves, but it's also going to block a lot of Sulfur Haze and stuff, which we knew that was like Jomon's play.
Right. Well, it blocks the damage portion. It doesn't block the fatigue portion. Sulfur Haze is weird in that it has fire poison damage. So fire resistance blocks everything. Poison resistance blocks only the damage component. The actual fatigue component is strictly fire.
So this guard commander thing is backfiring seriously against the Jomon, who is not prepared at all for Foul Vapors.
Yeah, Foul Vapors is just murky them. But even if they had been, planning on doing some sort of like guard commander type thing, they really needed their mages to be on advance and cast.
Yeah.
Right? Because that gets them into range for better accuracy on their evocation. Like, if you're planning on doing evocation and you know that the person you're fighting is blobbing up like this, you need your mages to be advancing.
Right.
And the only one that he's got doing that is his Ryujin. All of his actual Shugenja are already sitting there. Oh no, one of them's moving forward. Okay, so he's got one of them.
And a lot of
like,
these troops that have moved forward because the commander they were guarding died.
Yeah. But like, from what I can tell, Jomon has only 2 mages moving forward. I guess the mages might have died.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe he was on advance and cast. He just had a very long buff script before then.
Yeah.
That would actually make that's no longer problematic.
Well,
But
we
yeah,
can take a look at that again.
Still completely unprepared for the foul vapors, which I suppose if he hadn't seen, he might not have had a good reason to suspect.
Yeah.
Like, if anything, expect Jomon to be the one dropping foul vapors here.
Right. I guess his god can't do it, but the Shugenja can. So, yeah.
Okay, so he's doing
Okay, we're now on turn 5, and do they start walking forward? They might have too many bodyguards where they literally can't, even if they want to.
Yeah, that might actually be it.
No, but I think we see a couple times. Okay, this guy's trying to now. These guys can get out. Oh, but he's fatigued out. Why are they? Oh, because they've been casting. Yeah, I think you're right. I think they did 5 buff scripts and then advance and cast. But they haven't been able to. I mean, it's a total train wreck.
Yeah, between the chill aura and the heat aura from the fire elementals, in addition to the fatigue they were already suffering, they were being pushed over the top by their own units.
Right. That's a train wreck.
Yeah, so complete scripting discrepancy is what I'd call this.
Yeah.
Arco massively outscripted Jomon here.
Yeah. Because for the number of mages, I mean, Jomon brought 25 mages at least.
17, 19.
Oh, maybe not 25.
I mean, not 25,
okay,
but he did bring more mages, and more importantly, he brought more gold and fort turns of mages, which is how I tend to evaluate like the comparison there.
Right.
So yeah, he brought more to this battle than Arco did. He just was out researched and out scripted.
Yep. Didn't hardly killed anything. Killed 45. Killed 30 hoplites, 9 cerulean warriors, 3 commanders, and 2 mages. And in exchange, he loses everything.
I would assume that actually a lot of Arco's losses are from his own foul vapors.
Yeah, because he didn't have Serpent's Blessing, so this was kind of the poor man's foul vapors, where he was relying on Poison Ward.
Yeah, and this early in the game, where foul vapor is most effective, that is kind of what you rely on.
Yep.
But it is imperfect.
Right.
So I would call that the end of this war, honestly.
Yeah,
I don't see how. Yeah, I don't think Jomon can recover from this.
And there's reinforcements coming. Look, there's Army 120 coming behind. There's troops on top of this fort. So
I'm curious to see that Bane thug. Actually, I want to see how it's geared.
Okay.
This is a buffed thug, and the other troops that are on that fort are actually guys that had retreated in.
Kind of a weird scripting thing. This guy moss bodied this tile instead of this one. It's very weird.
That is odd. Yeah. How's the Bane geared though? That's what I was curious about.
Dusk Dagger, Frostbrand. I think this was designed to kill the Ghost King if he showed up here.
Yeah, that's actually really cool. I like that.
Yeah, a very killy thug. All the gear on it is killy. Wait, why did he put this on though? Because they have better armor than this by default. It's kind of weird.
I don't know. So sometimes you use that to remove encumbrance, but these guys are undead, so they don't care.
Yeah, that's kind of weird. But otherwise, I like it. It's a very, very killy thug, and then with these protection buffs on it, he's just going to go ham.
Maybe defense malice? Maybe? That's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I agree. He should have just left that blank.
But this is a great thing to send here because, reasonably low commitment. This isn't an extraordinary investment. And
it opens up the retreat path.
Yeah. Right. Opens up a retreat path, blocks the retreat for Jomon, and was going to kill an infinite amount of PD probably. So very cool.
Yeah, well done. And he even sieged Jomon's off fort there. Yeah, to the southeast.
So I think Jomon's, at least they had a good battle where they got to ride out here. But so far they've been in war basically since very early in the game. The first war to break out here was with Zabalba and them, though they never had a major battle. Jomon is probably, we don't know what he's been doing with his mages. He might have been patrolling his cap a lot of turns with mages to try to keep Zabalba out. So
we do know that he's super behind on research.
Right.
So he was never, basically since that war with Zabalba, he was never a contender.
Right. And that's kind of the terrifying thing about flyers is, were there flyers in his cap circle very often? Sometimes, but not super often. Were there flyers in 2 range of his cap circle the whole war? Yeah. So he never got and that's when you play against flyers, especially when you don't have as many troops as they do. You use your mages. Otherwise, you're going to, get flyers on top of your forts and then you're out of the game. So it kind of sucks.
Yeah, now the question is basically just a matter of spoils, of who gets all of Jomon's stuff. Right now, we know that Shababa and Jomon have a nap. Um, so Shababa would need to kind of get Jomon to annul that in order to go vulture that territory.
Right.
Gath and Erythia also can potentially vulture stuff. I guess Erythia less so.
Right.
But they do have that one like stack in their water fort, so they can like kind of scoop up a little bit if they got Jomon's permission. But otherwise, it looks like Agartha is looking to be on 3 caps.
Yeah. And
Or sorry, not Agartha, Arco.
Arco, yeah, and not many players are on 2. Like there's only a handful that are at 2. Like a lot of the high position players, it's like Arethia's on 2, but they don't really have the full spoils of a war, right? They had to split it with Pythium. Pangaea and Gath also had to split the spoils of a war. The only person to like properly win a first war and like take all the spoils is TNG. And
Right. They have to split all of their mages and spend all their gold on units ahead of time in order to do that. So they kind of like,
right.
put themselves in a position where they needed to win that war in order to be on parity with the other nations in the game.
Yeah. And Arco had to do the same thing. They put all their mages here, but Arco is now, not only did they win their first war, they're potentially set up to not only have the entire spoils of a first war, but the entire spoils of a second war. So that would be very alarming for everybody.
I'm really enjoying Arco as this looter player.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I'm enjoying is
what
that
did you call him at the beginning? He's like the heel.
He's the heel. Yeah. No, I was actually about to mention that is that from what we've read of their diplomacy, they're absolutely setting themselves up to be the heel of this game. The guy who's just a jerk to everyone, but is still relevant and someone that people need to fight against.
Yeah, I mean, if he gets all the spoils of Jomon, I think he's going to move into a pretty clear position 1. Because Arco has a great late game. It's maybe not the best in LA, but moving into it from this strong a position, they're looking great.
The one thing which, as you were showing on those graphs there, is that their research is not great. And there are other nations that are going to be getting even more out of their research. So with Erythia's new alliance with TNG, they're in a position to not only continue, like, cruising ahead on research now that they no longer need to spend all those mage turns, but they're also going to be able to invest in global. So, like, if they're splitting globals with TNG, as TNG had kind of said that they were going to do, Erythia is almost certainly going to be the caster of those. Right. So even though they're not going to get the full benefit from the gem income, we're going to see them at the very top of the gem income graph at the very least.
Yeah. Yeah. And Arco's also in the kind of awkward position that they picked this war with Jomon, by the way. Jomon didn't really pick this with them. They were like retaking stuff, but this was like Arco deciding to kill Jomon. When you get into a position where you're mobilizing mages to go in this like looter thing, like looter quest for glory, where they're going out and killing more players, you end up getting like lots of land if it works. But as the cost of that, if you're playing against good players, is you have to mobilize all your mages at a minimum. So that's like fed into this thing where now they're in this really weird position where they're going to be number 1 in margin on provinces if they take all this land. And they're going to be almost the worst research of all the major relevant players. So it would make sense for people to think about stabbing them. There's other threats too in the game, but...
Yeah, assuming that they see that research graph, absolutely. That said, Arco is a great nation for recovering because mystics are just so good.
Yeah. He can catch up in research really fast, but for a period, but that would be the argument to go ahead and stab him now if you're going to, right? Is don't let the guy who's got the 3 caps with all the surrounding land sit there and catch up on research and be bigger than everybody. So,
yeah.
I think we've seen there's some light rating that happened, but I don't think it's super consequential here.
Yeah, we've just about covered it.
Yeah. All right. Well, this was a really long episode, an hour and a half. Thank you for sticking through it with me, Sai.
Absolutely. I mean, it was well worth it.
Yeah, this was an entertaining one. Yeah, and I actually peeked ahead at the next episode. So that's going to be a really entertaining turn too. So looking forward to seeing you then, guys.
All right. See everyone then.
Cheers.